Welcome to A.U.M. We are live, which means anything could happen. I'm your host, Kalli of Kalli Collective, a digital marketing agency designed to build relationships between financial advisors and their target audience through data-driven custom content and advertising. Have you ever wanted to be featured in the news or wish you interviewed better when you were featured? Today, we're talking with Ben Lewis, Chief Communications Officer at the Financial Planning Association, about the do's and don'ts of public relations and the resources available to all FPA members. I have my own set of questions, but since this is a live stream, please ask your questions in the comments. We'll see them on our end and answer them as they come in. And if we happen to get more than we can handle, we'll reply in comments after the event. So welcome, Ben. We're excited to have you with us today.
It's great to be with you, Kalli. How are you doing?
I am doing so good.
Good.
And so many of our viewers may not know this, but Ben, you used to own and operate a public relations firm for 8 years before transitioning to the nonprofit sector. And now you're the Chief Communications Officer for the FPA. So you're bringing over 2 decades of experience to this conversation, which is really exciting for me.
Well, yeah, it's more than 2 decades. It's actually closer to about 28 years.
So amazing.
Makes me feel a little old.
Age is just a number.
Yeah.
Public relations, so it means a lot of things to a lot of people. How do you define it?
That's a great question because too often I think people think of public relations as purely being about media. But media is one small part of public relations. When you think about it, public relations to me is really 2 key things. Number one is creating and maintaining a positive public image. Right? So it's about telling a positive story. And so when you think about all the ways that you can leverage public relations to build that, and you're a marketer, so you can appreciate having a digital footprint. The bigger your footprint is and the more positive story it tells about you and your background, your expertise, who you are and what you do, it's better for you. But on the other side of that, it's also about effectively connecting with your publics, right? Public relations, not media relations.
Yeah.
Well, all your publics are everyone that you touch, everybody you influence. So it certainly could be the media, but it's also your clients, your prospects, centers of influence, family, friend, anybody, right? Yeah. So it's all about creating this digital this positive impression of yourself among everybody that you can be in front of and touch.
Okay. Yeah. Branding, marketing, hand in hand here.
Right? Exactly. And one feeds into the other.
Yep.
Getting this great media attention and being in front and being in the public and doing more things that make you more visible can easily be leveraged across your marketing.
In your experience, what is one of the most important things an advisor can do to keep this well-maintained public image?
To me, I think the most important thing people can do is put a premium on the client experience. You want to build advocates for you as a professional, for you and your business. By putting that premium on ensuring that your clients have that great experience, it helps prevent from having detractors rather than advocates. If you have people out there talking about you, talking about your business, talking about an experience they had in a negative way, that can cause more damage. Force you to be in reactionary mode, so you can't be out there talking about all the other great things that you want to be talking about.
Yeah.
Putting that premium on client experience, to me, I think is just table stakes. It's something you have to be thinking about at all times.
Talking of detractors, how do you come back from bad press?
So, bad press isn't something that just happens.
Yeah.
Chances are, if you've had a bad experience working with a reporter or feeling like some coverage of you and your firm is not what you were expecting, chances are you either said something or did something during the course of that interaction with that reporter that led to that. And this is all about having a good mental mindset when you're talking about media and working with reporters, is that you need to be able to find the silver lining to any cloud.
Yeah.
every experience that you've had working with a journalist or doing some kind of interview or whatever is an opportunity to tell a different side of the story. So one that actually can create a learning opportunity, not only for you, but for people who are being exposed to that news coverage. So if something comes out and it's not necessarily telling a positive story about who you are, what you do, how do you actually internalize that and turn that into an opportunity to not only improve your processes and what you're doing, but then to tell that story in a positive way?
Yeah.
So a lot of it comes down to how you think about
Sure.
that. If your gut is to attack,
yeah,
because you feel like you're attacked, that's going to be worse for you down the road.
This is bringing up the old saying, all press is good press. So in a way, it sounds like it could be, the way you're thinking about the bad press could be good press.
Well, I mean, look, getting your name out there is great, but remember what we said at the very beginning. Public relations is about creating that positive digital footprint. It's about creating that positive public impression of who you are.
Yeah.
Anything that's negative about you is going to be giving people yet another impression of who you are. You want people to readily understand what you're really about.
Yeah.
And that any kind of negative coverage, and not necessarily that there's going to be a lot of negative coverage.
Right.
Advisor. I mean, unless you are Bernie Madoff, right? The coverage isn't going to be, really bad. I mean, maybe you were misquoted, or maybe something you said was taken out of context. There's ways that you can address that directly with the journalist to have that corrected.
Yeah.
So you need to be in the right mindset and not just automatically go to attack, because you feel like you were attacked.
Right.
That's just going to work against you.
Right. I guess I should back up a little bit and let's talk about how advisors can get press, because I went straight to bad press. Yeah. I know it's on many advisors' goal list to be in the news. I mean, I get asked about that a lot. What advice do you have to advisors to accomplish this?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of different points, but if I had to kind of focus in on maybe a few that I think are most important. Number one, I would say, is really understand who you are and what you do. All right. So really kind of doing a little, internal self-reflection about who you are as a professional, areas of specialty, things that you actually do for your clients will help you kind of hone in on those things that you're most passionate about. Right. Those things that, so look, when you come from a place of passion, you talk to a journalist, you talk to one of your COIs, and you're talking about a subject that you're really passionate about, that, something that you do, like if you're an advisor and you have a passion for working with teachers, or working with women in transition, or working within, diverse, underserved communities. When you can focus your media outreach on those subjects that are really central to who you are and that make up what you do, what you say and how you say it's going to come across differently. The other big thing is, and I see this all the time, people want to get in the media, but they're not a consumer of the media.
Now that's interesting.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I hear all the time from people like, oh, I'd love to be in the Wall Street Journal. I'd love to be in the New York Times, or I'd love to be on the cover of Time magazine. All right, but you actually like reading and really digesting what those outlets are actually covering, what they're doing, what the journalist is specifically focusing on. And so by actually being a consumer of the media, you can actually not only understand potential opportunities for you to position a story, but you can actually pick up on stories that are already being written where you could actually provide further context or kind of help a reporter take a story in a bit of a not necessarily a different angle, present other sides to a story that maybe they're not covering in their stories. So taking the time to really kind of sit down and actually read or listen or review what's currently out there can go a long way. Then the other thing I would also say is, stay true to what you do.
Yeah.
Remain in that comfort zone. This goes back to that earlier point about focusing on those things that you're most passionate about, those things you actually do. It can sound great because, maybe cryptocurrencies or about alternative investments, because they're, especially alts, they're kind of all the rage right now. People are talking a lot about it. It might sound great, to be in a story in the Wall Street Journal talking about alts. But if at the core of your business, you're not doing that,
Right.
Then don't agree to do an interview with a reporter because they're calling up saying, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about alternative investments," and you're like, "Great, I'll do it." And then you instantly, an hour out from the interview, you're going, "Oh crud."
I don't know anything about this.
Or I haven't done my research. I haven't done my homework.
Right.
You don't want to be in that position.
Yeah.
So don't agree to do things, or don't agree to do interviews that maybe aren't in your wheelhouse. Focus on who you are and what you do.
Yeah. We just got a really good question. So when we're talking about the outreach to members of the press, are we talking about cold emails to reporters, or should advisors be making phone calls? How would you suggest they reach out?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's going to probably be an email. All right.
Yeah.
A lot of time you have this all goes to really understanding the preferences of these journalists. All right. Journalists today, you look at the kind of where the media landscape is today. I mean, everything is really kind of driven digitally.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of journalists I've been working with for 20 years. 20 years ago, they were writing one article, maybe a week.
Yeah.
Some were just writing a column for a magazine. A lot of these journalists are generating content every day and multiple times a day, right? And so they're always working on deadline. If you pick up the phone, your gut is to call a reporter. That's probably not going to do you any good, right?
Yeah.
My simple suggestion is simply drop them an email. A lot of times you can, a lot of journalists, you look at a lot of these digital stories, you go all the way down to the footer and there's like an email address for that reporter.
Yeah.
Shoot them a note. But the best thing I think to do is to give them, number one, an understanding of why you're reaching out. So maybe there was something in that story that you read that you really liked, right? Mention that. Say, I was just reading a story about X. I really like what you said about this. As I was reading it, I thought of this other side of the story that perhaps you haven't really considered, or things like that. The idea here is you want to make that connection, but you want to actually demonstrate how you can be helpful to them in their work moving forward.
Value add on. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And even, I have a story myself when I worked internally for financial firms, and I did exactly what you're saying. I was reading an article, scrolled to the bottom, the interviewer journalist's email was there. So I reached out, and it actually ended up, they were like, "Hey, do you ever take guest contributions?" And yes, and then they had us doing one monthly after that. So you just never know what's going to come out of reaching out.
You never know. I mean, and look, I also tell people all the time, use LinkedIn to your advantage. I think LinkedIn is almost, you can use it as almost a pseudo media database. I mean, look, there's a lot of these big platforms out there that can cost tens of thousands of dollars a year. But if you come across an article by a reporter and you really liked it, and you think that there's an opportunity because you have a certain area of passion, specialty that you're working in, and you know that this reporter is actually covering this, send them a LinkedIn request. And in the little message that you can send in your request, comment in the story. Say, I really like what you did here. I'd love to connect with you on future stories you might be working on about this topic.
Right.
And actually utilize that to your advantage. And then, I always say that journalism is a bit of a nomadic profession. One day a reporter might be at Investment News. The next day they've taken a job at financial planning.
Yeah.
The one thing that everybody updates, the one place that everybody goes to update is their LinkedIn profile.
Yep. Right? New job, update that status.
Exactly. So now what you can do is you can actually track where people are moving to and what they're going to be covering and so on. And so you can actually use it almost as like a little bit of a media database for yourself. So take advantage of what LinkedIn can do.
Yeah. Speaking of resources, does the FPA offer any resources for members? I'm pretty sure I remember there was a checklist a year or two ago.
Yeah. So at FPA, we do a couple things. So we actually have a media training program that all FPA members can go through. It's a on-demand virtual media training that I've actually recorded for the association. What's cool about the media training program is that when you go through it, if you're a CFP professional, you can actually then be opted into FPA Media Source, which is our completely automated media query platform.
Yeah.
And what it does is it connects journalists with FPA members who are CFP professionals and stories that they're working on. And the system just powers the entire connection. But what's neat about it is that it presents opportunities to our members on a regular basis. I mean, just today, I've already sent out 6 queries. To date, we've had the system in place for about 7 years. We've sent out just over 7,300 press requests to members. And these are coming from everything from New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, CNBC, and so on, all the way down to the trades.
Yeah.
And so they're just like these quick opportunities to get your name out there. What's neat, and I'll mention this, we're going to be making a big announcement about this in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We're relaunching the entire media training platform, the media training program to go even deeper. And so we're actually partnering with Advisor PR, which is a subsidiary of Jay Conley, on creating a 5-module course available through the FPA Learning Management System.
Yeah.
And that first module is going to be completely free. And that's the one that's going to get you qualified to go into media source.
Okay.
And there are other 4 modules that even go deeper. Everything on how you actually forge relationships, how you pitch reporters.
Yeah.
How you leverage those in your marketing, all the great media attention you're getting. So that's coming in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's exciting. Especially the leveraging and marketing, because that's on my end. That's where I see people missing the boat.
Yep, absolutely.
So this sounds like a lot of investment of time for an advisor. Have you seen advisors get any business from being in the news?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's several stories that I have. One that really stands out was several years ago. I was working with a journalist who was with the Associated Press. So the Associated Press, I mean, it's a network of tons of papers, and they basically distribute this content through multiple newspapers and media outlets across the country. They wrote a story about financial windfalls. And I had this advisor that had this specialty in working with like inheritances and so on. Yeah. And so she did an interview, and the article came out. It was great. About 3-4 months later, she got a call from somebody who had just come into an inheritance. Relative had passed and left a few $1 million.
Just a few.
Just a few $1 million. But what she saw was this article appear in her community newspaper, and she kept it. And finally, after about a few months, she actually made contact with that advisor and became a client.
Long shelf life is what I'm hearing.
It really does. I mean, it is amazing what being in the media can do. But look, I'd like to sit there and say that it's always going to result in new client leads, but it's not how you really leverage it. Right? And getting in the media is great, but people can't sit back and just think, "Oh, right, I'm going to do a bunch of media interviews and it's going to automatically generate new clients." You have to be pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
In pushing that content out to your ideal clients.
Yes.
Pushing that information out to your client base. The more you can do that, the more you can really kind of shout from the rooftops that you've been in the Wall Street Journal, you've been and show them the content, the more it's going to actually result in actually getting some potential new business out of it.
Yes, 100%. I think that's for any content. I mean, I've seen people put so much time and effort into creating videos or a blog, but they don't push it out. And then it's just a lot of time. And if someone just happens to go to your website, then it can be valuable. But unless you're pushing it out, they're not going to see it. Exactly. I always tell clients, if you email it out, you will get double the views. And that's something I've seen like consistently and historically.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mentioned this before. I mean, we live in a much more digital media landscape today. And so a lot of the journalists that you're going to be working with, they're going to want to know that you are going to be an advocate for that content. That you're going to be pushing that out there. I tell every reporter, journalist that I work with on FPA related things, send me the link as soon as it comes out and I will push it through our networks. I will share it far and wide. that goes over really well. I mean, when you're, I mean, not only a consumer of what they do, but you're going to be a distribution mechanism for that content. Everybody wins in that regard.
Yep. Okay, so we talked briefly about sending cold emails and then this resource that the FPA has. And LinkedIn. But how can advisors make connections in the press? Are there any other ways that we should be aware of?
I mean, look, I mean, there's a variety of ways. I mean, the ones that we already talked about are kind of, to me, are just kind of like the low hanging fruit. Those are things you really need to do. The key is it all comes back to this idea of mindset, right? And think of all the different tactical ways you can do it. The big thing, it all comes back to mindset. When you have an opportunity to send a reporter an email or send them a LinkedIn invite, or, in the case of like Media Source, where you have these queries that are coming in, you're seeing it, and after a while you start to develop a bit of a relationship with these folks. It's all about approaching that outreach with more of a helpful attitude and less about a selfish attitude.
Yeah.
It's very easy to want to position yourself as the expert. So I tell everybody all the time, I mean, approach it like you want to help them do their job.
Yeah.
You want to help educate their readers, their viewers, their listeners. When you can do that, it's really going to help you. The other thing is that, I know here at FPA, right? I mean, one of the greatest advantages that we have as an organization is that we're really focused. We put a premium on the idea of community. So, our members are not only members of the national organization, but we're members of their local chapter. And there you're meeting different people, and when you have an opportunity to engage with other planners who may have worked with a journalist, and a journalist specifically has been doing, ask for a virtual introduction.
Yeah.
Ask a colleague of yours to make that introduction to that journalist, because that you have information that's going to help them do their job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, leverage those connections, leverage those COIs. I mean, if somebody has that connection and you want to be introduced, you have to ask.
Yeah. Okay, so they ask, they introduce, they land an interview. What tips do you have to help them nail the interview?
So I've got a lot of these, and I go over them in the media training, but I'll talk about a few. First and foremost is you have to do your homework. All right. Don't sit back and think, I know everything about the subject, because people in financial services, financial planning, they know that things are always evolving. Things are always changing. There's new information, new data that you can use to your advantage. So you have to do your homework on the topic. All right. So understand the ins and outs, the data and everything else. The big thing, and this is the thing that a lot of people miss out on, is doing your homework on the reporter themselves.
Oh, now that's interesting.
So I tell everyone, before you do an interview, Google the name of the journalist, and then click on the news button and sort by most recent, and actually read what these journalists are writing. When you do that, you can actually pick up on hot button issues that they're actually covering, how they frame stories. You may actually pick up on how they might position a certain issue that maybe they're not very pro about, and maybe again, that's an opportunity, because when you're sitting back and you're thinking about your messaging, you'll be able to better frame what you want to say if you really understand how a reporter will address that specific issue. So you have to do your homework. The second thing is you have to nail your messaging. So I call it your aces. So it's like a good hand of poker, right? Out there is play poker. An ace is a winning card, right? You always hear the term play your aces in poker. There's a lot of merit to that when it comes to PR. So when you're going in an interview and you have your aces, those are your main message statements. Those are the statements that you're going to play time and time again, because they're going to inform, they're going to educate, they're going to be helpful, right? You need to draft those out in advance. And what's cool, when you do a lot of your interviews, you're going to be on your computer. You're going to be I'm on the computer right now. On the phone. All right. You can have your messages right up on your computer screen, and you can go right through them, right? Those are your ace statements, but you also need to have, and you're going to appreciate this, you need to have a message about your business. Who you are, what you do, how you do it, who you serve, and the reasons why people need to work with you, right? 20 seconds or less, how you can convey that. It sounds pretty bad when you get asked, oh, tell me about your business. And you're kind of stumbling over, well, I think about 100 clients. And I think, you want to have a nice,
right.
say, 20-second elevator statement of who you are and what you do. The other thing I would say is keep in mind, it's a conversation, not an interview. Approach that opportunity to talk to that reporter like you're talking to a client.
Yeah.
Right? Or you're talking to a prospect. If you think about how you actually have a conversation with your client when you get asked a question, use that same approach in actually talking to that journalist.
Yeah.
Right? The more conversational you keep it, the better you're going to come across, the more comfortable you're going to be. So that's the other big one. And then the other one I would say is, and this is always my favorite, is content is king, but passion is what sells.
Ooh, I love that.
That's one of my favorite things that I talk about when I do the media training.
Yeah.
You can have great content. It's easy to come up with it. Again, if you do your homework, you do your research and so on, you can have great content. But if you can't deliver that with some passion and some excitement and get the listener, in this case, the journalist, to really believe in what you're saying, it's going to go over not the same.
It comes across more fake.
Well, yeah, I mean, or maybe it makes it sound like you have a lack of belief in what you're saying. Because everything when you're talking to a reporter, everything is, I believe this. My opinion is that. Make them feel that opinion. Make them feel, because the more passionate you are about the subject, the better it's going to come across.
Yeah. And I'd say most advisors I know are pretty passionate. So they just got to tap into what they're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. And that all starts with knowing who you are. Knowing what you're about.
Yes. We put a lot of time in our onboarding doing just that with advisors. Let's talk about who your audience is, and let's talk about who you are and what your key topics are. For this very reason, we always go back to it. So in your experience, what have you seen work well for advisors, and what mistakes have you seen them make?
What's worked well? I mean, so this is, when we think about like the interaction with the journalist, I would say outside of, approaching them with the right mindset, I would say being original. Journalists are reaching out to you, because they believe that you've got maybe a unique perspective. You have something different to say.
Okay.
Don't just regurgitate the same thing that everybody else is going to be saying. Really, if you take some time and you think through, this is the subject, this is what, and thinking through kind of maybe a little bit of a slightly different opinion than maybe what everyone else is saying. Look, you may, on a subject, you may have a totally contrarian viewpoint compared to what everybody else is saying. If that's really your opinion, say it. Right? You got to let them understand that. Again, I would say keeping the focus on the reporter and the end reader, listener, viewer is key. The other thing I would say is being brief and to the point. Again, a lot of these journalists are working on multiple deadlines and so on. I think the more tight and concise that you can engage with that reporter, deliver your main messaging, the better it's going to be. The thing that I see, the big mistake I've seen advisors make is being selfish.
Okay.
I've got too many stories about advisors over the years who have done things that just ran contrary to what building a relationship is all about. So, case in point, I had somebody who did an interview for a major magazine, and the magazine took pictures of this individual's client for the story.
Okay.
They didn't get their photo, and it wasn't their photo. It was their client's photo. And they were really taken back by it. And so they ended up, their gut reaction was to contact the editor and blast them for not including their photo in the magazine.
Right.
That didn't work out well. For that advisor. So again, it's an opportunity to educate. It's an opportunity to build a relationship. I always tell everybody, your goal is not to be a source for a journalist. Your goal is to be a resource. A source is somebody who might get interviewed once and you may never hear from that reporter again. A resource is somebody the reporter knows that they can come to time and time and time again, because maybe you gave great data, or maybe because you had a really good quote, maybe you had a different viewpoint, or maybe you just connected them with another professional who maybe is an expert in something. When you've taken the time to actually develop a relationship, you're going to create 100 additional opportunities for yourself to appear in stories written by that reporter.
Right.
And that's all mindset, right?
Yeah.
It's all about approaching it with the right attitude and really with what you're trying to achieve. And that is building a relationship that's going to lead to more opportunities for you.
I mean, I think that's great advice for any COI or relationship that an advisor is trying to build, or any person, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm coming up to the 30-minute mark here. So, Ben, I really appreciate the time you took to talk with us today. As we are closing, could you let everybody who's watching know what they can look forward to at the upcoming FBA conference?
Yeah, so the FBA annual conference is coming up September 27th to 29th. It's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got a really cool show planned. We've got our keynotes are Chris Gardner, and he's going to be interviewed on stage by Caleb Silver, the editor-in-chief at Investopedia. Chris Gardner. Yeah, exactly. And Chris Gardner, everyone should know this. If you've seen Pursuit of Happiness, it's Chris Gardner from the Pursuit of Happiness story.
Okay.
He's a terrific guy. I've had an opportunity to actually interact with him just about a month ago. We're going to have this really great marketing panel that's going to have Diana Cabresis, Samantha Russell. We've got Penny Phillips, and that's going to be moderated by Justin Mack of Financial Crime Magazine.
Yeah, I remember you posting about this on LinkedIn, and I was like, it's all women. Yeah.
It's all women. I mean, and they're all terrific, just like you, Kalli. They're all just terrific marketers, and so that's going to be a great one. But there's so many different cool things that are planned for the event this year. And I know Kalli is going to be there as well.
That's right.
Doing a breakout session. So yeah, it's going to be a terrific event, and I think everyone who's coming to it's really going to enjoy it.
Awesome. I'm excited to be there. And
we're excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks. And for everyone watching, if you are going, make sure you bookmark my session, Effective Digital Marketing Strategies, on Wednesday at 3:30. Something else to note is next month, we will be talking about how to get referrals from CPAs, from someone who built his business doing just that. So join us next month as we talk with Jerry Scott about building COIs and getting referrals. Thanks for joining. And if you're not already, get savvy at the following. And please take note that during this month and next month, we are offering 50% off of our onboarding for any advisor who signs up for one of our content packages called The Full Monty. So check it out, go to our website, and I will see you next month.